Have you ever wondered what would happen if other people could no longer control your inner world? Imagine receiving a cold message and not spending the entire night questioning your worth. Imagine being criticized without feeling the need to explain yourself for hours. Imagine someone withdrawing affection, changing their tone, ignoring you, misunderstanding you, or even leaving you, and still being able to remain connected to yourself. Not untouched, not emotionless, not cold, but steady. There is a difference between being hurt and being destroyed. Pain is part of being human. Destruction begins when another person's behavior becomes a verdict about who you are. Carl Jung understood that the deepest wounds are rarely created only by what is happening in the present. The present event often touches something older, a forgotten fear, a buried humiliation, a childhood belief, a part of the psyche that has been waiting in darkness for years. This is why the same situation can affect two people in completely different ways. One person receives no reply and assumes the other person is busy. Another receives no reply and immediately feels rejected. One person hears criticism and considers whether it is useful. Another hears criticism and feels as if their entire identity has collapsed. The event is the same. The inner wound is different. Most people spend their lives trying to control the event. They try to make everyone behave correctly. They try to avoid rejection. They try to become so useful, attractive, agreeable, successful, or emotionally perfect that no one will ever have a reason to leave. But this strategy fails, because no matter how carefully you live, you cannot control every person, every mood, every opinion, every ending, or every betrayal. Someone will misunderstand you. Someone will project onto you. Someone will disappoint you. Someone may even hurt you deeply. The real question is not whether pain will enter your life. The real question is what happens inside you when it does. And this is where Jung's psychology becomes more than theory. It becomes a path back to your own center. The first thing you must understand is that people do not always create your deepest pain. Sometimes they reveal it. That may sound unfair. It may even sound as if the person who hurt you is being excused. They're not. Cruelty is still cruelty. Betrayal is still betrayal. Disrespect is still disrespect. But if you focus only on what the other person did, you may miss the hidden mechanism that gives their behavior so much power over you. Suppose someone you love becomes distant. You notice shorter replies, less warmth, fewer calls. Nothing has been openly explained, but your body already knows something has changed. Your chest tightens. You begin replaying recent conversations. Did I say something wrong? Am I becoming too much? Are they tired of me? Have they found someone else? Should I apologize? Should I give them space? Should I send another message? Within minutes, their distance becomes a story about your worth. But look carefully. Their distance is real. The conclusion that you are unlovable is not. That conclusion came from somewhere else. Perhaps affection in your childhood was unpredictable. Perhaps silence was used as punishment. Perhaps love disappeared whenever you made a mistake. Perhaps you learned to monitor the emotional atmosphere because the moods of adults determined whether you felt safe. The present person did not create all of that. They activated it. And once the wound is activated, you are no longer reacting only to the person in front of you. You are reacting to every previous moment in which you felt unseen, unwanted, replaceable, or unsafe. Jung believed that what remains unconscious does not disappear. It influences perception, attraction, reaction, and choice from beneath the surface. You may believe you are responding rationally, but often an older part of you has already taken control. This is why you may know that someone is unhealthy and still feel unable to walk away. Your conscious mind understands the pattern, but your unconscious recognizes something familiar. The uncertainty feels familiar. The waiting feels familiar. The need to earn love feels familiar. And the psyche often confuses familiarity with destiny. You call it a powerful connection, but sometimes it is an old wound recognizing its own language. This is one of the most difficult truths in emotional life. What feels intense is not always what is healthy. What feels familiar is not always what is meant for you. What feels like love may sometimes be fear, hope, projection, and unresolved pain woven together. Until you understand this, you may repeat the same relationship with different faces. The names change, the beginning changes, the promises change, but the emotional structure remains the same. You are attracted to someone who is difficult to reach. You work harder. They become inconsistent. You become anxious. They return with affection. You feel overwhelming relief. The relief feels like love. Then they withdraw again, and the cycle strengthens. This is not because you are weak. It is because the nervous system can become attached to unpredictability. Pain creates tension. Reconnection creates relief. The body begins to crave the relief, even though the same relationship keeps producing the pain. This is why walking away can feel like withdrawal. You're not only leaving a person, you are leaving an emotional cycle your body has learned to expect. Jung would ask you not merely to judge this pattern, but to become conscious of it. Because what you can observe, you can begin to change. The next time someone activates you, do not begin with the question, what does their behavior say about me? Ask instead, what has this awakened inside me? This question changes the direction of your attention. It brings your energy back from the other person into your own psyche. What has been awakened? Fear of being abandoned? Fear of being replaced? Fear of being ignored? Fear that you're only valuable when you are useful? Fear that if you stop giving, the relationship will disappear? Fear that your needs will drive people away? Fear that being fully seen will lead to rejection? The purpose is not to shame yourself for having these fears. The purpose is to know what is operating. Awareness creates distance. There is the fear, and there is the part of you that can observe the fear. There's the old story, and there is the consciousness capable of questioning it. There is the wound, and there is the deeper self that can hold the wound without becoming it. This distinction is the beginning of psychological freedom. You do not heal by pretending the frightened part does not exist. You heal by developing a new relationship with it. Imagine a child who wakes from a nightmare. The child is terrified. You would not say, "This is irrational. Stop feeling it." You would remain present. You would help the child understand that the dream felt real, but the room is safe. This is what you must learn to do internally. When rejection awakens panic, remain with yourself. When loneliness tells you to return to what hurt you, remain with yourself. When shame says you are defective, remain with yourself. When uncertainty creates a catastrophe in your mind, remain with yourself. Do not immediately obey the feeling. Do not immediately send a message. Do not immediately apologize. Do not immediately beg for reassurance. Pause. Let the body experience the wave without turning the wave into an instruction. You can say, "A part of me is afraid." This is different from saying, "I must act now." You can say, "A part of me feels abandoned." This is different from saying, "I have been abandoned." You can say, "A part of me wants their approval." This is different from saying, "Their approval determines my value." Language creates space, and in that space, the adult consciousness begins to return. But becoming less controlled by pain requires more than understanding fear. You must also understand the shadow. Jung used the word shadow to describe the aspects of ourselves that the conscious personality does not want to recognize. People often imagine the shadow as something evil, but the shadow contains more than cruelty, jealousy, rage, or selfishness. It also contains everything you had to suppress in order to remain accepted. Your anger, your confidence, your ambition, your ability to say no, your instinct to walk away, your desire to be seen, your refusal to tolerate manipulation, your capacity to disappoint others. For someone taught that goodness means obedience, healthy rebellion enters the shadow. For someone praised only for being helpful, personal needs enter the shadow. For someone punished for anger, self-protection enters the shadow. For someone taught to be invisible, confidence enters the shadow. Then, as an adult, the qualities that could protect you remain psychologically unavailable. You sense disrespect, but you do not speak. You feel exhausted, but you keep giving. You recognize manipulation, but you explain it away. You want to leave, but guilt pulls you back. You know something is wrong, yet you keep negotiating against your own perception. Why? Because at some point, your psyche learned that self-protection threatens belonging. You learned that boundaries make people angry. You learned that disagreement creates distance. You learned that expressing pain makes you difficult. You learned that saying no makes you selfish. So you become pleasant on the surface while resentment grows underneath. You smile when you want to scream. You forgive before the injury has been acknowledged. You offer another chance before the previous chance has been respected. You call it compassion, but sometimes it is fear. Suppressed anger does not disappear. It may become anxiety, exhaustion, passive aggression, physical tension, sudden emotional explosions, or a deep attraction to people who express the power you have forbidden in yourself. You may be drawn to emotionally detached people because they possess the distance you cannot access. You may admire rebellious people because they embody the freedom you suppress. You may resent confident people because they reflect the self-permission you have never given yourself. What you reject within yourself often returns through other people. This is why relationships are such powerful mirrors. They do not only reveal what you love, they reveal what remains undeveloped in you. Consider the person who avoids conflict at any cost. They are proud of being peaceful. They never confront. They never express anger. They tolerate broken promises, dismissive behavior, repeated lateness, invasions of privacy, and emotional neglect. They tell themselves they are mature. Then one day, after months or years of silence, they explode. Everyone is shocked, but the explosion did not begin that day. It was built from 1,000 moments of self-betrayal. Every swallowed sentence remained in the psyche. Every false smile created pressure. Every boundary felt but not expressed added another layer. This is why maturity is not the absence of anger. It is the ability to understand anger before it becomes destruction. Anger can carry information. Something has been violated. Something valuable has not been respected. Something within you is trying to protect your integrity. When anger is conscious, it can become clarity. When unconscious, it becomes chaos. The same is true of resentment. Resentment often tells you that you have agreed to something your deeper self did not want. You said yes while feeling no. You gave while secretly hoping to be repaid. You remained available while feeling unseen. You kept serving a relationship that no longer felt reciprocal. Then you became angry at the other person for accepting what you continued to offer. This does not mean their behavior was fair. It means your resentment may be revealing a boundary you refuse to establish. The shadow does not ask you to become cruel. It asks you to reclaim the energy that cruelty, guilt, and fear have been controlling. You do not need to humiliate anyone. You do not need revenge. You do not need to become emotionally hard. You need access to your own no. A conscious no is not violence. It is information. It says, this does not work for me. This is not acceptable. I cannot continue this conversation in this form. I care about you, but I will not participate in this pattern. I understand your pain, but I will not become the place where you repeatedly release it. These sentences may feel dangerous when you have spent your life maintaining peace through self-erasure. But a peace that requires your silence is not peace. It is submission. This is where many people misunderstand compassion. Compassion does not mean endless access. You can understand why someone behaves as they do and still protect yourself from the behavior. You can see their childhood wounds, their fear, their insecurity, their difficulty with intimacy. You can understand why they lie, withdraw, attack, control, or avoid responsibility. But understanding does not create an obligation to remain available for more pain. You cannot complete another person's psychological work for them. You cannot integrate their shadow. You cannot make them honest by becoming easier to deceive. You cannot make them emotionally available by having fewer needs. You cannot love them into responsibility. Change requires their participation. Without awareness, humility, and consistent action, your empathy may only make dysfunction easier to continue. This is the hidden danger of the rescuer. The rescuer appears strong, helpful, generous, indispensable, But beneath the role may be a bargain. If I save you, you will need me. If I solve your problems, you will not leave. If I give everything, you will finally recognize my value. The rescuer avoids confronting a terrifying question. Who am I if no one needs me? Being needed can feel safer than being loved. When someone needs you, your place seems guaranteed. But need is not intimacy. Usefulness is not belonging. Sacrifice is not always love. Sometimes it is a strategy for avoiding abandonment. This is why you must become honest about the reasons behind your giving. Do you help because you freely choose to? Or because saying no creates unbearable guilt? Do you offer support while respecting your limits? Or do you disappear into another person's needs? Do you give from abundance? Or do you give as an unconscious attempt to purchase loyalty? A gift that requires self-erasure eventually becomes a debt. You begin keeping an internal record. Everything you did, everything you tolerated, everything you sacrificed. Then one day you ask, after all I have done, how could they treat me this way? The pain is real, but the hidden bargain must also be seen. Perhaps you gave what was never asked for. Perhaps you hoped they would return it in the form of commitment, gratitude, or permanence. The answer is not to stop being generous. It is to stop using generosity as a substitute for self-worth. Healthy love can say, I care about you, and I cannot do this for you. I forgive you, and I will not return to the same situation. I understand why you are struggling, and your choices still have consequences. I love you, and love alone is not enough to make this relationship healthy. These are not heartless sentences. They are integrated sentences. They contain compassion and self-respect at the same time. That balance is one of the signs of individuation. Jung described individuation as the process of becoming psychologically whole. Not perfect, whole. It means bringing the conscious and unconscious parts of the personality into relationship. It means questioning the masks you wear, meeting the shadow, examining inherited beliefs, separating your true values from the expectations placed upon you, and gradually becoming the person you were before survival taught you to perform. This process often feels like loss. You may lose relationships that depended on your lack of boundaries. You may lose approval from people who preferred your obedience. You may lose the identity of being the good one, the strong one, the helpful one, or the endlessly understanding one. You may lose the fantasy that someone will eventually recognize your sacrifice and rescue you from the life you built around them. But what emerges is inner authority, the ability to say, I know what I feel. I trust what I see. I can consider another person's perspective without abandoning my own. I can't survive someone's disappointment. I can love without surrendering my dignity. I can walk away from what repeatedly harms me. I can be misunderstood and still remain loyal to what I know. Inner authority is not arrogance. It does not assume you are always right. It does not reject feedback. It does not use self-respect as an excuse to become selfish or cruel. True inner authority can listen because it is not desperate. It can apologize without collapsing into shame. It can admit a mistake without concluding, I am a mistake. It can change its mind. It can repair. It can accept responsibility for behavior without accepting responsibility for everything. This makes a person psychologically difficult to manipulate. Manipulation depends on predictable wounds. If someone knows you are terrified of abandonment, they can threaten distance whenever you resist. If they know you need approval, they can withdraw praise until you obey. If they know guilt controls you, they can call you selfish whenever you establish a boundary. If they know you need to be seen as good, they can provoke you and then condemn your reaction. But when the wound becomes conscious, the mechanism becomes visible. Someone becomes cold after you say no. Before, you would panic and reverse the boundary. Now you notice they are withdrawing warmth to restore control. Someone says, you have changed. Before, you would defend yourself. Now you think, yes, I'm no longer as afraid as I was. Someone tells you that protecting your energy is selfish. Before, guilt would consume you. Now you ask whether their definition of love requires your exhaustion. Someone accuses you of not caring because you no longer rescue them. Before, you would prove your love through another sacrifice. Now you understand that care and responsibility are not the same thing. This is the moment the old dynamic begins to die. Not because you defeated the other person, but because you stopped playing the role that kept the pattern alive. Every unhealthy relationship has roles: the pursuer and the avoider, the rescuer and the victim, the controller and the compliant one, the critic and the person who constantly proves themselves, the emotionally unavailable person and the one who tries to earn closeness. Often, both people receive something unconscious from the pattern. The pursuer avoids inner emptiness by focusing on the other person. The avoider maintains control by never becoming fully available. The rescuer feels valuable because someone needs saving. The victim avoids responsibility by remaining helpless. The controller escapes vulnerability through domination. The compliant person avoids rejection by surrendering autonomy. This does not mean both people cause equal harm. It means freedom requires understanding the role you have been repeating. Otherwise, you may leave one relationship and rebuild the same emotional structure with someone new. Different face, same fear, different promise, same uncertainty, different beginning, same ending. This is why some people say, I always attract the same kind of person. Often, attraction is influenced by what the unconscious recognizes. You may feel an immediate pull towards someone who recreates an emotional atmosphere you knew early in life. Their distance feels familiar. Their unpredictability feels familiar. The need to win them over feels familiar. Your nervous system calls the familiarity chemistry, but healthy connection may initially feel less intense. There is no constant guessing, no dramatic withdrawal, no euphoric reunion after pain, no endless cycle of fear and relief. And because the body has associated intensity with love, peace may feel boring. Consistency may feel suspicious. Availability may feel too easy. You may even lose interest in someone precisely because they do not activate your wound. This is why healing involves more than avoiding harmful people. You must teach your inner world that peace is safe, that consistency is not emptiness, that love does not need to be earned through suffering, that desire can exist without obsession, that another person's availability does not make them less valuable. They do not need chaos to feel alive. This takes practice. When the urge to chase appears, pause. When the urge to return to an unhealthy cycle appears, pause. When loneliness tells you that familiar pain is better than uncertainty, pause. Do not shame the urge, but do not automatically obey it. Ask, what does this part of me believe will happen if I do not act? Perhaps it believes you will be forgotten. Perhaps it believes there will never be another connection. Perhaps it believes being alone is dangerous. Perhaps it believes letting go means the relationship was meaningless. Speak to that part honestly. Something can matter and still end. I can miss someone without returning. I can feel lonely without abandoning my standards. I can survive the absence of someone who could not meet me fully. This is how self-trust is built, not only through affirmations, through evidence. Every time you keep a boundary despite guilt, the psyche receives evidence. Every time you resist the urge to beg for reassurance, the psyche receives evidence. Every time you walk away from repeated disrespect, the psyche receives evidence. Every time you speak honestly and survive being misunderstood, the psyche receives evidence. I can protect myself. This is the foundation of emotional security. Many people believe security comes from knowing no one will hurt them, but no one can promise that. Even loving people will disappoint you. Some will leave. Some will misunderstand your needs. Some will fail you at moments when you needed them. Others may betray you intentionally. Security cannot come from controlling all of this. Security comes from knowing that when life hurts you, you will not join the attack against yourself. You will not turn betrayal into self-hatred. You will not turn rejection into an identity. You will not conclude that another person's inability to love you proves you are unlovable. You will not beg for belonging at the cost of your integrity. You will feel. You will grieve. You will seek support when necessary. You will learn, and you will remain. This is not a promise that pain disappears. It is the knowledge that pain will no longer have unlimited access to your identity. But another layer must be understood. A criticism hurts most when it matches an accusation already living inside you. Someone calls you selfish. If you have spent your life trying to prove you are good, the accusation feels unbearable. Someone says you're unsuccessful. If achievement has become the foundation of your worth, the words follow you for days. Someone calls you too emotional. If you already distrust your sensitivity, shame appears immediately. Someone says you're difficult to love. If this is your deepest fear, the sentence enters like a weapon. The external voice finds an internal opening. This does not mean the criticism is true. It means the reaction is revealing an inner judge. Whose voice is it? Who first made you feel like too much? Who taught you that mistakes made you unworthy? Who convinced you that rest was laziness? Who treated your sensitivity as weakness? Who made you believe love had to be earned through performance? Sometimes the voice inside your mind is not originally yours. It may be the echo of a parent, a teacher, a former partner, a community, a culture that benefited when you doubted yourself. The person may be gone, but the judgment continues. You criticize yourself before anyone else can. You reject your own ideas. You minimize your achievements. You apologize for taking up space. You compare your private struggles with everyone else's public appearance. Then external criticism feels devastating because you're already living in an inner courtroom. The other person simply enters as another witness against you. To leave this courtroom, you must question the law by which you have been judging yourself. What makes a human being worthy? Perfection? Approval? Beauty? Productivity? Usefulness? Never failing? Always being chosen? Would you apply these standards to someone you deeply loved? Would you tell a child that a mistake removed their right to love? Would you tell an exhausted friend that their need for rest made them worthless? Would you tell someone grieving that their sadness proved weakness? Most people would not. Yet they offer compassion to everyone except themselves. Self-compassion is often misunderstood as indulgence. But compassion does not remove responsibility. It changes the way responsibility is carried. You can say, I acted badly, and I need to repair what I can, without saying, I am fundamentally bad. You can say, I ignored my intuition, without saying, I am stupid. You can say, I stayed because I was afraid, without saying, I deserved what happened. Shame attacks identity. Responsibility addresses behavior. Shame says, you are the failure. Responsibility says, something failed. What can be learned? Shame freezes. Responsibility transforms. Wholeness requires accepting that you contain contradictions. You could be loving and angry, strong and afraid, generous and tired, wise and capable of mistakes, independent and still in need of connection. You do not become whole by accepting only the qualities that look beautiful. You become whole by creating room for the complete human being. The pursuit of perfection creates fragility because the perfect identity must constantly be defended. If you believe you're always kind, you cannot acknowledge resentment. If you believe you're always strong, you cannot ask for help. If you believe you're spiritually advanced, you cannot admit envy or insecurity. If you believe you're completely independent, you cannot confess loneliness. The rejected quality enters the shadow. Then it begins acting indirectly. The person who denies anger becomes quietly cruel. The person who denies neediness becomes manipulative. The person who denies selfishness gives until they become resentful. The person who denies vulnerability becomes emotionally unavailable. The person who denies envy criticizes anyone who dares to succeed. Wholeness says, yes, this also exists in me. Not to justify harmful behavior, to remove the need for unconscious performance. The more honestly you know yourself, the less power accusations have. Someone says, you can be selfish. You can think, yes. Like every human being, I have selfish impulses. I remain responsible for my actions. Someone says, you made a mistake. You can answer, yes. I am capable of mistakes. Someone says, not everyone likes you. You can understand, of course. No authentic person is universally accepted. The insult loses force because you're no longer defending an impossible image. This leads to one of the greatest forms of freedom. You stop trying to control the version of you that exists in other people's minds. Every person sees you through their own history, wounds, expectations, and projections. To someone who benefits from your silence, your voice may appear aggressive. To someone who benefits from your self-doubt, your confidence may appear arrogant. To someone who avoids responsibility, your boundaries may appear cruel. To someone who understands relationships through control, your independence may feel like rejection. To someone committed to misunderstanding you, no explanation will ever be complete enough. The ego wants fairness. It wants everyone to know the truth. It wants the record corrected. It wants those who judged you to finally understand your intentions. But sometimes they never will. And your freedom may depend on allowing them to misunderstand. This does not mean communication is useless. Healthy communication matters. Clarification matters. Repair matters. But there is a difference between communicating and pleading for permission to exist. You know you have crossed that line when you keep explaining the same truth to someone who repeatedly twists it. You offer more context, more evidence, more emotion, more vulnerability. You believe the perfect arrangement of words will finally make them see you correctly. But some people do not misunderstand because you explained poorly. They misunderstand because misunderstanding protects their position. If they understood you, they might have to acknowledge the pain they caused. They might have to question their behavior. They might lose the story that allows them to feel innocent. So they preserve a version of you that justifies what they did. You cannot always reason someone out of a story they emotionally need. At that point, silence becomes dignity, not the silence of fear, the silence of completion. You have spoken honestly. You have listened. You have considered your responsibility. You have corrected what needed correction. Now you stop entering the courtroom. Let them carry their story. You carry your life. Think of how much energy is spent managing perception, replaying conversations, imagining better responses, checking whether someone has seen your message, wondering what they're saying about you, defending yourself in arguments that exist only in your mind, trying to appear unaffected, trying to make someone regret losing you. Even the desire to prove you have moved on keeps you psychologically connected. True detachment does not perform freedom. It simply becomes unavailable to the old pattern. You stop posting for them to see. You stop succeeding for them to regret. You stop healing in order to win. You stop imagining the day they return and finally recognize your value. You begin living for reasons unrelated to their reaction. This is when the bond truly begins to weaken. Hatred is not always freedom. Hatred can be another form of attachment. You are still organizing your inner world around the person, still giving them attention, still allowing their existence to shape your direction. Freedom arrives when they're no longer the center of the story. They become a chapter. Important, perhaps. Painful, perhaps. Transformative, perhaps. But not the entire book. You do not need to erase the past. You need to place it in the correct position, behind you. There may still be days when memory returns. A song, a place, a date, a dream, a sudden image of who you were together. Healing is not proven by never remembering. It is revealed by the relationship you now have with the memory. Before, the memory felt like a command. Go back, reach out, find out what they are doing, reopen the wound. Now it becomes a wave. You notice it, you allow it, you breathe, and you remain where you are. This is emotional maturity. You no longer obey every feeling because it is intense. Feelings are real experiences, but they're not always reliable instructions. Fear may say, run, when you need to stay. Loneliness may say, return, when you need to continue forward. Anger may say, destroy, when you need to establish a boundary. Shame may say, hide, when you need to be witnessed. Desire may say, this person is destiny, when they are simply familiar. The conscious person creates space between impulse and action. Within that space, choice becomes possible. And choice is the foundation of freedom. Without awareness, you react. With awareness, you respond. Reaction belongs to the past. Response belongs to the present. The difference may last only a few seconds. Someone criticizes you. The old self attacks, defends, explains, or collapses. The emerging self pauses. What am I feeling? What part of this is true? What part belongs to them? Does this require a response? What response would preserve my integrity? Sometimes the answer is a conversation. Sometimes an apology. Sometimes a boundary. Sometimes leaving. Sometimes no response at all. The goal is not to become silent in every situation. The goal is to stop being automatically controlled. This is why self-knowledge protects you more than emotional armor. Armor blocks pain, but also blocks intimacy. A person who vows never to trust again may avoid betrayal, but they may also avoid love. A person who never becomes vulnerable may avoid humiliation, but they will never be deeply known. A person who expects nothing may reduce disappointment, but they may also reduce wonder. Jung did not ask people to escape life. He asked them to enter it consciously. The answer is not numbness. It is depth. A deep tree still feels the storm. Its branches move. Leaves fall. It may even be wounded, but the roots remain. Your roots are not built from constant admiration. They are not built from always being chosen. They are not built from controlling every outcome. They are built from a relationship with the deeper self. In Jungian psychology, the self is greater than the ego. The ego is the identity you know, your name, your history, your roles, your achievements, the image you present to the world. The self represents the wider totality of the psyche, the deeper center that draws you toward wholeness. You may experience it as intuition, a quiet knowing, a dream that refuses to leave, a sense that a certain life no longer fits, a feeling that you have become a stranger to yourself. The self often speaks when the life built by the ego becomes too small. This can create crisis. A relationship ends. A career loses meaning. An identity collapses. The old motivations stop working. You feel empty and disoriented. The ego says, everything is falling apart. But the deeper psyche may be saying the false structure can no longer contain who you are becoming. Not every loss is punishment. Some losses are initiations. They remove what you would not release voluntarily. They expose dependencies you called love. They reveal identities you called personality. They confront you with emptiness you were avoiding through relationships, work, achievement, or constant stimulation. And this is the point where everything begins to change. You stop waiting for certainty from people who repeatedly create confusion. You stop asking another person to confirm what your own experience has already shown you. You stop treating your pain as evidence that you should return. You begin to understand that forgiveness does not require access, compassion does not require self-abandonment, and love does not require you to remain where your dignity is slowly disappearing. This is not hardness. It is consciousness. You can still miss someone and refuse the pattern. You can still love someone and accept that the relationship cannot continue. You can still feel grief and know that going back would be another betrayal of yourself. The mature psyche can hold more than one truth at the same time. They may have mattered deeply. They may also have hurt you. You may treasure what was real. You may still need to release what became destructive. You do not need to turn them into a monster in order to save yourself. Clarity is enough. From here, healing becomes a series of quiet decisions. You pause before reacting. You listen to the body without obeying every fear. You recognize the shadow before it erupts. You say no before resentment becomes hatred. You stop explaining your worth to those committed to denying it. You stop performing strength and begin building it. You keep promises to yourself, especially when no one is watching. Each of these choices returns a small amount of energy to your inner world. And slowly, the center of your life moves. It moves away from their approval, away from their silence, away from their return, away from the fantasy that one final conversation will restore everything. It moves back to you. This does not mean you will never feel pain again. It means pain will no longer be allowed to define the entire kingdom. A rejection may hurt, but it will not decide your value. A betrayal may change you, but it will not own your future. A criticism may make you reflect, but it will not become your identity. A departure may create grief, but it will not erase the home you have built within yourself. This is what it means to become psychologically rooted. You do not ask the world to promise that nothing will ever wound you. You make a different promise. Whatever happens, I will not abandon myself. That promise is the beginning of real security. Because when you trust that you will listen to yourself, protect yourself, tell yourself the truth, and remain through the difficult moments, other people lose their absolute power over your inner life. You remain open without being naive, sensitive without being easily controlled, loving without becoming dependent, compassionate without becoming a sacrifice, strong without becoming cold. This is not invulnerability, it is wholeness. And wholeness is more powerful than emotional armor because it allows you to feel without disappearing inside what you feel. The next time someone's behavior awakens an old wound, remember that the wound is not the whole of you. There is the frightened part, and there is the consciousness capable of holding it. There is the memory, and there is the person you are becoming now. There is the pain, and there is the deeper self that pain cannot completely possess. Return to that self. Return when silence frightens you. Return when criticism awakens shame. Return when loneliness invites you back into an old pattern. Return when guilt asks you to betray your boundary. Return when the world tells you that being loved matters more than being whole. Again and again, return, until your own presence becomes the safety you once demanded from everyone else. Until solitude no longer feels like abandonment because you are no longer absent from your own life. Until love is no longer something you beg to receive, but something you can offer without losing your center. Until the person in the mirror becomes someone you recognize, trust, and protect. Then you will understand the deeper truth. The goal was never to create a life where nothing painful could enter. The goal was to become so conscious, integrated, and deeply rooted that whatever entered could no longer take possession of the whole kingdom. Pain may knock, grief may visit, memory may return, but they will no longer sit on the throne. You will.